In October 2017, below the dry peaks of the Pyrenees in France, Luc Moreau and Camille Dupont set out to find a narrow karst cave system. When they woke up that morning, they thought they were just another ordinary day. When they reached the entrance, they wrote their names in the logbook and then down on the piece of paper they would carry: harness, helmet, flashlight, rope. 4 words on paper. After a few short hours, those same words would mean dark, damp suffocation and silence, and a way to stay alive only called saliva-thin vital thread. It was a misty day in the mountains. Along the summit, the temperature fluctuated. Wind rumbled through briefly, then ceased repeatedly, and with that came more changes. Outside, the air felt shaky and inhospitable. When they got near the cave mouth, cold air whistled out of it and enveloped their faces, overlaying a faint but biting draft that came from deep inside. The humidity hung around near the entrance. When they squirmed through the tight opening, first thing they smelt was wet rock, damp earth, slime, stone. From the outside, the cave was but a blind dark hole in the mountain. On the inside, it was a manned network of channels, a hidden maze. Phosphor fed the beams of their flashlights the first few meters.
You know it's a bad life choice when the cave smells like a wet grave and you still go, yeah, let's go deeper.
Pebbles ground underfoot, shifted with each step and every move. Gravel loosened partly by their own passage ran down the path ahead in breaks, where bootstracks trampled it. Depths of destruction from her squad tactics. There were places where the ceiling dipped, and Luc and Camille had to walk crooked to get through them. The colder and narrower sections made people turn sideways, in earnest, up against rock walls. Cold oxygen was lost in minutes without ever being inhaled properly once again. You could feel it, this being squeezed close. Not only did your body compress, but with that pressure too, came an anxiety. They counted. Breathing in cold air, they silently measured how much their bodies could take. Inside even further, the gallery was colder still. Moisture clung to clothes as they crept deeper down into muscles from a dull ache. Cracks oozed water that fell softly from the damp ceiling into dirt and mud below on all sides, kicked up again by boot tips as he picked his way through.
So here we are, flashlights cutting the dark like discount lightning. No echo, no sound, just 2 heartbeats and a bad idea echoing in HD. You know, normal people hear narrow, wet, pitch-black tunnel and think, nope. Cavers hear it and go, this seems emotionally important for my weekend. Listen to that silence. That's the cave politely asking, are you sure about this, champ? And they still keep going, bent in half, slipping on slime, breathing like a broken vacuum cleaner. Every step is basically a multiple choice test. A, go back. B, go back. C, still go forward because pride is louder than common sense.
The flashlights cut across wet rock like lightning for a second. Then everything went black. Sometimes even the echo vanished. Nothing more was heard, but the gentle crunch of boots on stone as they moved, and their own breathing visibly heightening whenever possible. That silence, which at first meant nothing, slowly became a vacuum that amplified fear felt inside. They rounded a tight bend and the passage grew more oppressive. Walls shut in, the ceiling dropped lower still. Luc led with small, slow steps. The ground was uneven, sections of mud here.
This is where one wrong step turns a hobby into a headline.
Others that seemed dry but concealed soft pockets below, and it was upon them that his light fell. Several indentations lay exposed. In other places, hollows were hidden beneath rocks and loose gravel. Somewhere in that fragile silence, a tiny mistake lay. Once he'd stepped past that bend, Luke's foot fell into an unnoticed hole. The New Year's Day fair at last had something to show for itself. His ankle twisted hard under his full weight, coming at an angle it wasn't built to support. He tried for a second to claw back his balance, whole body tensed and twitching, but on ground slicker than rink ice it could not be done. Sideways he went. The shift of weight sent a sharp shock up through his ankle. That instant, Camille did indeed feel movement behind him and pulled back Luke's coat, but in that confined space, his hand reached for the wet rock before it could find its own balance, slipped the hard left side of his body. When he did so, that wall fashioned of bone and muscle smacked hard against cold stone. In those few seconds, the cave seemed to grow tighter all around them. Darker, too. The ceiling towered lower, and every scrape of rock seemed as though it were a warning shot. A thin wave of panic washed over both of them. Breaths were short and ragged. Control slackened itself off for another moment. Wrapped in fear, the still expanse of this cave left a sense, additional on top of those others, of crushing in. Just finished the seconds-long maze crack. A few small rocks tumbled loose and dropped into the mud, but the ceiling stayed where it was.
Heh. Oh look, the cave's giving them a hug. And their nervous system is filing a complaint. You hear that echo? That's not just rock. That's the universe gently whispering. Maybe this wasn't your smartest Saturday plan. The ceiling's dropping, the walls are closing in, and their breathing sounds like two busted accordions stuck in a blender. But sure, tell me again how normal hiking was too boring. This is the moment where your brain should say, we leave now. But pride goes, relax. We're already down here, might as well almost die about it.
That slight vibration in the body and separation from outside world is rare, terribly frightening. But rapeseed leaves and planks of wood also hold Largo with equal force. And for long, the narrow rock sending pain shot through Luke's body from his foot to heart. He could still stand, but one careless pass up a clever break would leave him unable to move Screwball again. The pain in Camille's side meant a nasty graze. Every breath helpfully pointed out where the stone had crashed. The first aid kit was carried. It had always been motionless because their fashion and now stowed meaning from life into unconsciousness. In that cramped passage, surrounded by darkness and silence, they worked on Luke's ankle, with the mini flashlight beam as a guide.
Funny. How the first aid kit stops being decoration the moment your ankle doesn't.
The loose bandage kept his game jammed under firm and even pressure when there was a contracture. Adjust snug, but not too tight. Loose, but not super loose either. Camille pressed a hand to the injure wall, trying in vain to get rid of some of its bloated pain. The stone was cold, and for a moment, it managed to push heat from the bruise back inside body walls. Taichi moved slowly, counting his breaths. If panic were to ever get the upper hand, both of them knew instinctively that even though it had been hard before, each step in a passageway narrowing to but 9 feet would become that much harder still. In caves like this, calling for a rescue team is always an option, but never a simple one. In a system choked with tight, twisting passages, others who enter have to share the same risks. Outside, there might be children, families, people waiting. Inside, there was only rock, cold, darkness, and 2 bodies. Often, rescue doesn't begin with flashing lights and helmets at the entrance. It starts with whatever calm and determination you can still find inside yourself.
You know what I always love about these moments? Outside you've got kids, families, people checking their watches, and inside you've got 2 people who thought, yeah, crawling into a freezing rock intestine sounds like self-care. Calling a rescue team here isn't like ordering pizza. You don't go, "Hey, I wedged myself into a stone throat. Can you send 4 heroes and a miracle?" Everyone who goes in shares the bill. Same cold, same darkness, same risk, just because somebody couldn't keep their ego on the surface. In the end, it's not the cave trying to kill them. It's their confidence doing all the heavy lifting.
There was no advisor at their sides. There was no expert studying everything they did. But Luke and Camille tried to call up everything they had ever learned. First, slow down your breathing, then decide what to do next. They chose not to go deeper. They chose to go back. A decision like that is a kind of wall for many cavers, meaning that when the urge to push on runs into the will to explore farther, turning back can itself seem like failure. But here it was, the will to live that took precedence over discovery. Now, light was the way out, not what lay hidden. Their flashlights couldn't draw a track into the unknown anymore.
Turns out adventure mode walks a lot slower once survival takes the wheel. Heh.
All they could illumine was a thin, frail line that led them home. Every step had to be sure-footed. Luke gingerly put his sound foot onto stones that wouldn't move, making sure not to load his injured ankle. Camille followed just behind, eyes fixed on the ground, searching for things that could trip them or pitch them headlong. Passages felt different when going back than they had on the way in. On the way therein, excitement made tight corners into technical problems. On the return journey there, just next to some former landmark might be a checkpoint where courage and fear were at stake together. This time they watched their breath carefully. Each of them calculated inwardly, hoping to trade panic for a little quieter rhythm. No longer was silence the enemy, only a place where you could think. Every echo, each tiny click as stone on stone slid against itself, reminded them to place the next step as carefully as if on eggs. Time slackened as they struggled forward through the limestone caverns. 10 minutes, 20, 30. Or was it more? Deep in the heart of the earth, the concept of time began to fade along with cold and weariness. Little by little, the body adjusted to a new order where pain was normal, and stubborn endurance presided over all. Luke's ankle throbbed, but the bandage held strong enough so that pain lay within manageable limits. At Camille's side, every inhalation sent waves of pain against the chill of late fall.
You know what I love about this part? Time isn't just slowing down, it's moving backwards. Minutes turn into hours, pain becomes your new meditation technique. They call this a limestone labyrinth. I call it a subscription to suffering with no cancel button. Meanwhile, I'm on my sofa, timing my microwave popcorn and still somehow leading a more fulfilling life. These two can't count to 30 without forgetting where their ankles are. And they'll come home bragging that this changed their lives. Sure, it changed them. Mostly by making standing up optional. Apparently, exploration means paying good money to feel like a human stress fracture.
Both of them had one clear thought. As long as they kept going ahead, there was still a chance of reaching daylight before they died. Near the entrance, the poor light of a winter afternoon at last overtook the narrow beam from their flashlight. After so much darkness, that light seemed out of place. A few meters from exit, the ground once more turned to muck. The kind of commonplace mud that kids might dash through without thinking twice. Here it was still serious, and more. Something could steal your load in a second. When they finally stepped out, a momentary relaxation ran through all their bodies. The cold air hit their faces again, but now it felt like freedom. Short, simple, and silent, and they surfaced. They were not going to give it all away here. Because the long journey was still ahead of them, Luke knew that his ankle still hurt. Camille knew the side ash would be with him for days. but both knew that none were beyond the point of no return. Underground, they had looked fear in the face. It had left them anything but prostrate. This time, more than pure technique had given them the upper hand, confidence and also composure. By the end of the day, the logbook held more than just a date and 2 names. On that page, invisible ink remembered a few other things: planning, patience, teamwork, and having the guts to turn back when it was necessary. The cave remained the same as ever: stone, rock, mud, walls cold and deep in darkness. What changed was how these people who went inside now thought of life. For them, a narrow passage would never again be just a question of technique. Each narrow space was a test to which there was no rush that ever paid off, and in such a test, true bravery was not always to keep going no matter what. Sometimes it's the unobtrusive decision, and made at just the right time, to turn around.
Well, well, look who decided to see daylight again. You two spend hours mud wrestling with rocks and air, and I burn through a family pack of crisps waiting for the inevitable. So tell me, what did we learn? That hidden holes like to eat ankles? That follow the light isn't just a metaphor? Don't get me wrong, I respect the whole face your fear thing, but there's a difference between facing it and giving it a piggyback ride. And as you emerge wiser, colder, and covered in cave pate, remember this: the cave didn't change. It never does. The only thing that changed was you and my couch cushions. Next time you crave adventure, call me first. I'll walk you through the thrill of staying home. Heh heh.